If you were talking to some sellers early on in career, what would you be telling them to kind of to do or to look out for throughout their career?
So yeah, that's a great question. But I think for me, staying in touch with the people you help is super important. And most salespeople I talk to don't do that. Once they close a deal, unless they're part of the account management team long term or they're part of the renewal process, they actually don't talk to their partners or their sold closed clients ever again. They pass them off. And I think what's helped me stay motivated and stay on the course is after I sell someone, every year or so you check in with them, see how they're doing, and that keeps that relationship going. Even if you never sell them anything ever again, but hearing their stories and seeing what you did for them, help them, continues to motivate you and inspire you to help other people. And that's super important. And I really like that you talk about the fundamentals, because the fundamentals don't change. How they're applied might change. And that's actually part of the reason I wrote my book, is because of this is more anecdotal, but 90% of all salespeople never read a book. I've met, of all the salespeople I've met, about 90% have never read a book since they left college or high school, wherever their last education was. And that's not necessarily a good thing, right? That's pretty bad. And so I wanted to create what I would call a gateway book, right? Like a gateway, almost like a gateway drug, where it's not hard to read. It's easy to find your way around it. It's easy to remember the information. It has lots of the fundamentals. It's something you can apply right away, something you can turn to any page and read. It's not full of long, boring chapters. It's just something you can pick up and understand and say, oh, this is the value I get when I read. So maybe now I'll read a more complex book or an in-depth book, or I can jump into something else. And that's kind of why I decided to write that book, is to help people understand that you have to keep learning or you're going to not be able to progress.
God, lots of good stuff there. I really like how you focused on keeping in touch with the clients that you've sold. It's, when we talk about relationships, one thing that you're really going to benefit from is that ability to work with people all over, the world throughout the course of a career, right? And staying in touch with those folks is going to be impactful for your career, because you never know where they're going to go, where they may be able to pull you. That's why you invest in those relationships. I look at relationships like a stock portfolio to some degree, because you've got to invest in each one. With a customer, same example, being able to find ways to stay in touch and continue to add value, whether it's, maybe you send them a newsletter, or maybe you invite them to events and things of that stature, or you're connected with them on social and you drop them a line from time to time. Those types of things are continued investments. I cannot tell you how many times a senior executive at an organization that I supported went to another company, and guess what? They did business with me there too. And if you invest in those relationships, it's like the dividends that are paid are continued business, continued relationships. And that's why I think those things are so important. The fundamentals are key. And like you said, they never change. People and process. Find the right people. As a sales leader, you find the right people, you get the right process going, and that process will change because the tools look different, the variables look different, the playing field looks different. All the fundamentals, though, are at the core of what we do, and that is what has made sales hum forever. I love, too, how you highlighted books. And I'm a firm believer too that you don't have to read as a seller. You don't have to read all sales books. Like I see posts that also are mixed on, hey, they love reading their sales books. Great. They love listening to sales podcasts. Great. Or I don't want to read about sales. Maybe I want to read nonfiction to totally free my mind or take my mind off the grind. Any of those things are key. I'd like to hear more about your journey on your book, Mareo. And the reason why is because, I talk to a lot of people that have written books, written sales books. Everybody has a driving force behind it. I like your motivation and that you wanted to write something that would be kind of an easy button for people to just kind of slide into, not long, cumbersome chapters to plow through. What was kind of the driving force, and what are you hoping to get out of it?
That's a good question. So I guess when I started really studying and taking that sales was going to be my craft and that was going to be my career, I started really studying and started reading tons of stuff. And then I would take notes on what I read. And so over the years, I've compiled tons of notebooks and tons of electronic documents of the notes that I took. So putting together that was kind of the main, how I kind of put it together. Why I did it though was all the time people would say, hey, since you've read the books, what should I do in this situation? They would just try to ask me questions so they wouldn't have to read the book. And that's fine, right? But they would just ask me, hey, what should I do here? What's the best book to read about this situation? So I just give them my list. And so because of that, I started actually producing book lists of books that I've read that I want to share with people and stuff, because people were asking me, right? And I guess the motivation to do it just became, you know what, I have all this information that putting it all together in one place isn't going to be easy for most people. And of the sales books I read, they're all very, very good and motivational. But I want to put something together that if I was beginning in sales and this was my first book I read, this would be the first book that should be read. And that was my initial motivation. But then after doing it, lots of people who have read the advanced copy, because it doesn't come out till next month, said, hey, I'm not in sales, but I really like this book. So I think it can help people no matter their situation. But the main idea was put a bunch of information that you have to collect in lots of places and just make it as an easy resource for people.
I love that because, well, first off, I mean, it's kind of like a Cliff's Notes version.
Yeah.
People were requesting you to serve that, that role for them. It shows that people want that information, but they want to read it in a relatable or easy kind of way. And I like that because I would say, when leading teams, or even when I was just starting out with a new book of business, it's all about getting that lay of the land. And nothing better than understanding all the resources at your disposal. One of the things that I built out historically for myself or for my extended team or even teams that I've led is let's kind of put a grid in place and understand what's the relationship heat map look like. But then to your point, what are those resources and where do I go to get them? Because you will find over time, and I think this is a key learning for sellers. I learned this by doing. I would look back on maybe a year and say, what could I have maybe done better? How could I set myself for this next year up better than I did last year? And I kept coming back to some of the same stuff. Like, man, I spent a lot of time maybe hunting and pecking for certain resources or, favorites that I could have, things I could have saved as favorites or documents or, just things that I needed kind of in a pitch binder. Let me get all that stuff culminated and then I can have it as a quick reference. So I love that you said that. The other thing that I would encourage a lot of sellers to do is exactly what you said. Create a journal of some kind. And it doesn't have to be cumbersome. I think a lot of times when you say to somebody like, hey, create a journal, they're thinking, oh my God, I got to write like a daily passage that's, paragraphs long. Not so. Some days I'll make like one line of like a bullet, just a bullet point item that is something that happened that day or a key learning, some type of experience, something that I might have contributed that drove impact or an outcome with a client or with my team or with other people that I get to interact with. And the reason for that is manyfold. When you look back and, we're in a day and age where a lot of us have a hand in writing our own appraisals, or we're always going to be conveying what we do, what value we bring to the business, to our superiors, to other people that we come in contact with. Let's say you're interviewing for another role, whatever it is. To be able to look back on that journal and articulate, these milestones along the way or these key learnings, I think that's super powerful. So I would encourage, I love what you said about just kind of logging these thoughts, these notes, these nuggets that you pick up from all over the place. That is a non-negotiable for me too.
Awesome.